The heat lay over the Mississippi lowlands like a living thing, thick and breathing, pressing down on the swamp until even the insects sounded tired. Cypress knees jutted from black water like broken bones. Spanish moss sagged from branches, unmoving, as if the air itself had given up. Somewhere deep in the trees, something splashed and then went quiet again. But wait for a second before we continue towards the video. Let us know in the comments which country you're watching from and what time of day it is for you. And don't forget to subscribe. A black man moved through that landscape with careful steps, his body angled slightly forward, his shoulders tight but controlled. Mud clung to his boots, boots that had once been strong leather but were now cracked and soft at the seams. His shirt was torn at the sleeve, the fabric darkened by sweat and older stains that would never quite wash out. Across his back, wrapped in cloth and bound with twine, was a long, narrow shape that did not belong to a runaway slave, but no one looking from a distance would have known that. He paused at the edge of a shallow pool, listening. The swamp spoke in layers if you knew how to hear it. Frogs, insects, distant birds, whined through leaves, water shifting against roots. And beneath it all, faint but unmistakable, the sound of men, boots squelching, chains rattling, voices careless and loud. 5 of them, he counted without thinking, the way he had learned to count other things years earlier. Enemy movement, rifle shots, heartbeats between explosions. 5 men spaced poorly, no real discipline. Dogs too, 2 at least, maybe 3. Their breathing carried far. The man stepped into the water, letting it rise over his ankles, then his calves. He walked straight through, slow and deliberate, letting the mud swallow his prints. On the far side he climbed out, waited a moment, then doubled back along a fallen log, balancing easily before stepping onto dry ground again. He bent, snapped a low branch, and dragged his boot heel through soft earth for several steps before straightening his gait and disappearing into a stand of reeds. It was a lie, laid carefully in the dirt. Behind him, Silas Crowder pushed through the brush with the confidence of someone who had never truly been afraid. He was built like an ox, neck thick, arms corded with old strength. Sweat soaked his shirt completely through, but he did not slow. He had hunted men for most of his adult life. He believed that gave him knowledge. It did not. "Dogs are sure," he said, tugging the chain in his hand. He ain't more than an hour ahead. Edwin Pike followed close, rifle half-raised, eyes sharp. He was younger than the others, lean, his movements quicker. He had learned to shoot well, but not to think far past the front sight. Still, something about this chase bothered him. "Tracks change," Edwin said. "Look at 'em." Boone and Harris tramped behind, brothers in blood and cruelty, grinning despite the heat. Boone laughed and wiped his face with a filthy sleeve. "All tracks look the same in a swamp," Boone said. "Black feet go forward, that's all we need." Matthew Cole brought up the rear. He said nothing. His eyes moved constantly, checking trees, water, shadows. He had been doing this work almost as long as Silas, but he trusted luck far less. They reached the clearing, where the broken branch hung fresh and pale against darker bark. Silas smiled. "See? Clumsy, scared." Edwin crouched, touching the mud. The print was deep, the heel dragged, too obvious. "He wanted us to see this," Edwin said again, quieter this time. Silas snorted. "You give him too much credit." The dogs pulled hard, whining now, confused by the water crossing but still eager. Chains clinked. Boone smacked one of the dog's flanks with the flat of his hand. "Get on," he growled. They moved on deeper into the swamp, following the story written in mud. Ahead of them, the black man climbed a slight rise. Pine trees grew thin and tall, their needles softening every sound. He stopped again, leaned against a trunk and closed his eyes. For a moment, the swamp vanished. He was lying in tall grass instead, his cheek pressed into damp earth that smelled of iron and smoke. His rifle lay steady against his shoulder. Far across an open field, gray shapes moved between broken fences. He had waited then, too. Waited until breathing slowed, until the world narrowed to a single point. When he had fired, the man in his sights had fallen without a sound. He opened his eyes. This was not that field. These men were not soldiers. But the waiting felt the same. He climbed the tree silently, hands finding holds without thought. From above he watched them come. Silas first, Boone and Harris joking behind him. Edwin scanning left and right. Matthew Cole lingering, looking up now and then as if he felt something he could not name. The black man studied them the way he had been trained to study enemies. How they walked, how they carried their weapons. Who would hesitate? Who would panic? Who might surprise him? He did not intend to kill any of them yet. He dropped from the far side of the tree and moved on. The sun slid lower, turning the swamp copper and blood red. Mosquitoes thickened, biting through cloth. The men cursed and slapped at their skin. The dogs grew restless, their noses struggling to make sense of a trail that bent and twisted unnaturally. "This don't feel right," Matthew Cole muttered. Boone laughed. "You say that every hunt." Matthew did not answer. They made camp on a patch of raised ground, lighting a small fire. Silas chewed on a strip of dried meat and spat into the flames. "We'll have him by morning," he said. "Ain't nowhere else for him to go." Edwin sat with his rifle across his knees, eyes on the dark. Somewhere out there something moved, but he could not tell if it was animal or man. Far away beyond their lantern glow, the black man watched the fire flicker through the trees. He felt no urgency, no fear. He adjusted the cloth around the rifle on his back and turned away, heading for higher ground where the swamp thinned and sightlines opened. He chose each step with care, already shaping the next phase of the hunt. Behind him, 5 men slept or pretended to, believing the story they had always believed, that they were the hunters, that the night belonged to them, that the man ahead was only prey. The swamp, ancient and patient, closed in around them all, holding its breath, and the war that had forged the black man into something far deadlier than they could imagine waited quietly inside him, ready to wake. Night did not fall in the swamp all at once. It crept, slow and deliberate, as if testing every shadow before committing to it. The fire Silas Crowder had built burned low and red, throwing weak light across damp ground and warped faces. Smoke curled upward and tangled with the hanging moss, then disappeared. Edwin Pike did not sleep. He sat with his back against a cypress knee, rifle across his lap, eyes fixed on the dark beyond the firelight. The swamp felt closer at night, tighter, like something alive that had shifted its weight. Sounds carried strangely, sometimes too far, sometimes not at all. A splash might be a frog, or it might be a man easing his foot out of water. Edwin rubbed his jaw and glanced at the others. Boone snored openly, sprawled on his back, mouth hanging open. Harris lay on his side, one hand curled around his knife. Silas slept sitting up, head tilted forward, chin resting on his chest, a faint scowl still carved into his face. Matthew Cole sat apart from them, eyes closed but posture alert, as if sleep were something he allowed only in pieces. Edwin looked back into the trees. He could not shake the feeling that they were being measured. Somewhere beyond sight, the black man lay flat on his stomach atop a low ridge, pine needles pressed into his chest. He had chose the spot carefully, downwind of the camp, high enough to see movement, low enough to break his outline. The firelight flickered across trunks and leaves but never quite reached him. He counted their breaths, one uneven and loud, one steady but shallow, one slow and heavy, two controlled, careful even in rest. He focused on the man sitting apart, the quiet one, Matthew Cole. The black man shifted his weight slightly, easing pressure from one elbow to the other. His muscles ached, but it was the familiar ache of waiting, not the panic of flight. He had learned long ago that the body complained most when the mind was uncertain. Tonight, his mind was clear. He did not touch the rifle. Not yet. The night dragged on. At some point the fire collapsed into embers. Boone rolled over and muttered something obscene. A dog whimpered, then went still again. Just before dawn the black man slipped away. He moved back into the swamp, deliberately leaving a trail this time, not careless but readable. He stepped where the ground would hold his weight just enough to leave prints. He brushed past reeds and let them sway. He wanted them to follow quickly. He wanted them tired. When the sky lightened to a dull gray, Silas woke and stood stiffly, stretching his arms. "Up," he said. "We move." The dogs were restless, noses low, tails stiff. Edwin rose slowly, scanning the tree line again. Matthew Cole knelt at the edge of camp, studying the ground. "He circled us," Matthew said. Silas frowned. "What?" Matthew pointed. "Tracks, light ones. He watched us." Boone snorted. "So what? He didn't do nothin'." Matthew looked up. "Men don't circle camps unless they're thinkin'." Silas spat. "All he's thinking about is getting away." They packed quickly and moved out. At first the trail seemed simple again. Clear prints, straight direction. The black man appeared to be heading toward firmer ground where the swamp gave way to patchy forest and old logging paths. The dogs picked it up eagerly, pulling hard enough to nearly drag Boone off his feet. "See?" Boone said. "Easy." Edwin followed the prints closely. After a mile his brow furrowed. "Look at this," he said. The others stopped. The footprints crossed a narrow stretch of dry earth, then vanished. No water nearby, no obvious cover. "He didn't just disappear," Edwin said. Silas scowled. "Dogs?" The dogs circled, confused, noses sweeping back and forth. One began to whine. Matthew walked past them, eyes on the trees. He stopped beside a fallen log and crouched. "He walked the log," Matthew said, "balanced across it, jumped down over there." Silas stared at him. "How do you—" "'Cause I've done it," Matthew replied flatly. Boone shifted uneasily. "That ain't normal." They followed again, slower now. The trail bent oddly, looping back on itself, then cutting sharp angles through brush. Once they found prints that suggested the man had been limping badly. Then, 50 yards later, the limp vanished entirely. Edwin's unease grew. "People don't heal that fast," he said. Silas shook his head. "People fake limps all the time. Not like that." They pressed on. Ahead of them, the black man paused beneath a stand of tall trees and knelt. He pulled a small object from his pocket, a spent brass casing dull with age. Union issue. He turned it once in his fingers, then placed it carefully on a flat stone near the path, a breadcrumb. Then he moved on. When Edwin spotted it, his breath caught. "Hold up," he said. Silas turned. "What now?" Edwin picked up the casing and turned it in his palm. "This ain't swamp trash." Matthew's eyes narrowed. "Union." Boone laughed loud and brittle. "Means some Yankee passed through once, so what?" Edwin looked at the casing again. "It's clean. Not buried, placed." Silas's face darkened. "You saying he's a soldier now?" "I'm saying he knows what this is." Silence stretched. Matthew spoke quietly. "Men who know what that is don't mow. We like scared runaways." Silas took the casing and flung it into the brush. "Enough, he's playing tricks. That don't change what he is." But his hand trembled slightly as he reached for his rifle. They moved again, slower, more cautious. Boone and Harris stopped joking. The dogs whined constantly now, unsettled. The terrain rose, the swamp thinning into uneven forest. Visibility improved, but so did exposure. Every clearing felt like a risk. Ahead, the black man climbed another tree higher this time and waited. He watched them approach, watched Silas bark orders, watched Edwin and Matthew scanning in opposite directions. He noted how the dogs strained toward him, how Boone yanked them back in frustration. He could end it here, he knew. One shot, then another. Chaos. Screams. This was not about speed, this was about control. He slipped away again, leaving the faintest signs of his passage. By midday the men were exhausted. Sweat soaked through clothing. Tempers flared. "He's leading us," Boone snapped. "Like dogs." Silas rounded on him. "You scared?" Boone flushed. "I ain't scared of no." A sharp crack echoed through the trees. Everyone froze. A bird exploded from a branch overhead, wings beating wildly. Edwin's heart hammered. He scanned, rifle up. Matthew whispered, "That wasn't us." They waited. Nothing followed. No shot, no voice, just silence. The black man lay prone 100 yards away, rifle still slung, the sound caused by nothing more than a snapped branch he had kicked loose deliberately. He watched their fear ripple through them, felt the shift in balance. Now they knew, not what he was, but that something was wrong. As the sun dipped again, shadows lengthened, and the men realized too late that the trail they followed no longer led anywhere familiar. Landmarks meant nothing, paths twisted back on themselves. The black man moved ahead, unhurried, guiding them deeper into ground he had already memorized. The swamp had become a maze, and the hunters were no longer certain they were the ones doing the chasing. By the time the sun slid low again, the swamp no longer felt like land. It felt like a trap that had slowly closed its jaws. Silas Crowder wiped sweat from his eyes with the back of his hand and cursed under his breath. His boots were soaked through, his shoulders aching from hours of tension he refused to admit. The ground beneath them rose and fell unpredictably now, pine roots breaking the surface like knuckles. Visibility came in sudden bursts, clearings that felt too open, followed by walls of trees that swallowed sound. No one spoke. Even Boone and Harris had gone quiet. Boone's mouth worked constantly, chewing nothing. Harris gripped his knife instead of his rifle, as if steel close to his hand made the world simpler. Edwin Pike walked stiffly, every nerve stretched tight. He felt as if they had crossed some invisible line hours ago, one that could not be uncrossed. The dogs strained at their chains, but not forward anymore. Now they pulled sideways, backward, noses lifting to test the wind instead of the ground. That frightened Edwin more than anything else. Matthew Cole moved at the rear, eyes scanning treetops, shadows, spaces between trunks. He had stopped looking for tracks entirely. Whatever game this was, it was no longer written clearly on the ground. Ahead of them, unseen, the black man slowed his pace. He had led them exactly where he wanted them, into a stretch of longleaf pine where the forest floor was soft with needles, where sound traveled strangely, where distance could lie. He knew these trees. He had walked among their kind before, rifle in hand, watching enemy lines dissolve into confusion under careful fire. He found his position and settled in. The rifle came free of its wrappings without a sound. The metal was cool, familiar. He checked the sight by habit, fingers moving with the ease of memory. This weapon had been cleaned more than he could count, cared for when food was scarce and sleep rarer still. It was not just a tool, it was a companion that had kept him alive when the world had seemed determined to end him. He lay prone atop a gentle rise, pine needles cushioning his body, branches breaking his outline. From here he could see a wide swath of ground below, a natural funnel between trees that forced men to pass through close together. He waited. The hunters entered the pines cautiously, spreading slightly but not enough. Silas raised a fist, signaling a halt. "Something's wrong," he said. finally voicing what had gnawed at him all day. Boone scoffed weakly. "You been saying that since morning." Silas ignored him. His eyes swept the forest, searching for movement, for anything out of place. He saw nothing. The black man centered his breathing, slowing it until each inhale and exhale matched the space between heartbeats. The world narrowed. Sound sharpened. The men below became shapes and angles instead of people. He chose his target carefully. Not Silas. Not yet. Not Edwin or Matthew. They were alert. They would scatter. He chose Boone. Boone stood slightly apart, impatient, weight on one leg, his rifle slung loosely. His mouth was open, about to complain again. The black man adjusted the rifle a fraction, aligning sight and breath and memory. He remembered another man once, laughing like Boone, laughing right before the sound had taken him. The trigger broke clean. The shot cracked through the pines like a whip. Boone jerked backward as if yanked by an invisible hand. His chest bloomed dark, his rifle slipping from his grasp as he fell hard onto the needle-covered ground. He did not scream. He did not even gasp. He was dead before his body finished hitting the earth. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then chaos erupted. "Contact!" Edwin shouted, spinning, rifle up. Silas dropped to one knee, scanning wildly. "Where?" Harris fell beside Boone, hands shaking as he grabbed his brother's shoulder. "Boone! Boone!" Matthew Cole dove behind a tree, eyes sharp, searching the treetops, the ridges, anywhere a man might hide. The dogs went mad, barking and pulling, trying to flee and charge at the same time. The black man did not move. He lay still, rifle steady, letting the panic burn itself out. Silas fired blindly into the trees, the shot useless, loud. Edwin fired once as well, aiming at nothing, more to feel control than because he saw a target. "Spread out," Silas yelled. "Find him," Matthew shouted back. "No, stay together." Too late. Harris scrambled backward, dragging Boone's body before realizing there was nothing left to save. He let go and ran, breath ragged. The black man shifted his aim, tracking Harris through the trees. Not yet, he told himself. Let them run. Let them feel it. Minutes stretched. No second shot came. The forest returned to uneasy silence, broken only by labored breathing and the dog's frantic whining. Edwin crept toward Boone's body, eyes never leaving the trees. He knelt and pressed 2 fingers to Boone's neck anyway, then recoiled. "Dead," he whispered. Silas's face was gray. "From where?" Matthew shook his head slowly. "Far." "How far?" "Far enough we didn't hear the bullet," Matthew said. "Just the crack." Silas swallowed. He knew what that meant even if he didn't want to say it. "Ain't no runaway," Edwin said quietly. Silas rounded on him. "Shut up." But the words rang hollow. They dragged Boone's body into a shallow depression and left it there. No one said a prayer. No one had the breath. They moved again, slower, tighter, every sense screaming danger. Above them, the black man watched them pass beneath his old position and slip deeper into the pines. He rose silently and relocated, moving along a parallel ridge. He left no trail now, no signs. This phase was different. Now it was war. As twilight thickened, Harris began to break. "He killed Boone like nothing." Harris muttered. "Didn't even see him." Silas snapped. "Keep it together." Harris shook his head, eyes wild. "This ain't right. This ain't—" A sudden rustle to their left made Harris spin. He fired. The shot tore through branches, echoing wildly. Nothing fell. The black man lay 50 yards away, watching, unmoved. He had caused the rustle with a tossed stone. Edwin grabbed Harris's arm. "You'll give us away." Harris yanked free. "We already are." Night descended fast, swallowing the forest. They dared not light a fire now. They huddled together in the dark, backs to trees, weapons raised, eyes straining. Silas whispered, "We move at first light." Matthew did not answer. He stared into the blackness where Boone had fallen, his jaw tight. Far off, unseen, the black man settled into another vantage point, rifle across his chest, eyes never closing. He had drawn first blood, and now they knew, truly knew, that the man they hunted was not running. He was choosing. Night did not bring rest. It brought waiting. The forest breathed around the 4 remaining men, every sound stretched thin by fear. Pine needles whispered when the wind passed through them. Somewhere far off, an owl called once and went silent. No fire burned now. Darkness pressed close, heavy and absolute. Silas Crowder sat with his back against a tree, rifle across his knees, jaw clenched so hard it ached. Boone's blood still marked his boots, dark and tacky. He had hunted men for years, but never like this. Never one who struck once and vanished like smoke. Edwin Pike crouched nearby, eyes red from strain. He had not lowered his rifle since Boone fell. Every shadow looked wrong. Every pause in the forest felt deliberate. Harris rocked slightly, muttering under his breath. His brother's death replayed again and again in his mind. The suddenness of it, the emptiness afterward. He could still hear Boone laughing earlier that day, calling the chase easy. Matthew Cole sat apart, knife laid across his palm, rifle leaning against the tree beside him. He watched the darkness with a stillness that bordered on reverence. He did not fear the night itself. He feared the man who used it so well. None of them noticed the black man watching from higher ground. His outline broken by branches, his breathing slow and measured. He had changed positions 3 times since nightfall, circling them the way a wolf circles a wounded animal. Each move was deliberate, each pause chosen. He studied their posture, their spacing, their nerves. They were unraveling. As he lay there, the past rose unbidden, not as a flood but as fragments that slipped between heartbeats. He remembered chains first, the weight of iron biting into skin, the smell of sweat and fear packed into dark spaces. He remembered fields that never ended and hands that took without asking. He remembered learning early that silence could be armor. Escape had not been glorious. It had been desperate. Cold nights. Hunger that gnawed until it became dull. The constant knowledge that dogs and men were always behind him. When he reached Union lines, he had collapsed at the feet of soldiers who looked at him with suspicion before they looked at him as a man. They gave him a uniform that didn't quite fit and a rifle heavier than anything he had ever held. They tested him, targets at first, then distance, then time. He had not known he could shoot the way he did until the officer stopped the drill and stared. Again, the officer had said, and again, the war hardened him quickly. There was no room for hesitation. He learned to breathe through chaos, to find stillness inside noise. He learned how men moved before they knew they were being watched. He learned patience. Now, in the dark pines of the South, those lessons returned like muscle memory. Below him, Harris suddenly stood. "I can't sit here," Harris hissed. "He's out there." Silas grabbed his arm. "Sit down." Harris yanked free. "He'll pick us off one by one." Edwin whispered urgently, "Lower your voice." Harris backed away, breathing fast. "I'm leaving." Matthew's eyes flicked to him. "That's how you die." Harris shook his head. "I ain't dying sitting still." He turned and ran. Silas cursed and raised his rifle. "Harris!" The sound of footsteps tore through the quiet forest. The black man moved. He slid down the ridge and cut through the trees at an angle, silent as mist. He did not chase directly. He intercepted. Harris crashed through brush blindly, heart hammering, tears streaking his face. Branches tore at his clothes. His breath rasped loud enough to betray him from a mile away. He did not see the shadow detach itself from a tree ahead of him. He felt a hand clamp over his mouth. The knife flashed once, clean and precise. Harris stiffened, eyes wide, then sagged as the strength left him. The black man lowered him gently to the ground, easing him onto the pine needles as if laying him down to sleep. No scream reached the others. Silas, Edwin, and Matthew waited tensely, weapons raised, ears straining. Minutes passed. Nothing. Silas whispered, "Harris." No answer. Matthew closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, something like certainty had settled there. "He's dead," Matthew said. Edwin swallowed. "How do you know?" "Because he ran." Silas's face twisted with rage and fear. "This ends at first light," he growled. "We move together, we don't stop." Above them, the black man wiped the blade clean and disappeared into the trees again. He felt no triumph, only resolve. Dawn came gray and thin, light filtering weakly through the pines. The forest looked ordinary again, almost harmless. That frightened Edwin more than the night had. They moved carefully, backs nearly touching, scanning every angle. Boone and Harris were gone now, left behind in shallow graves of needles and silence. The dogs were gone too, chains cut in the night. Silas did not know when it had happened. He only knew he felt naked without them. After an hour they found Harris. His body lay half hidden beneath a fallen branch, throat open neatly, no sign of struggle. Edwin retched. Silas stared, eyes hollow. "Knife," he muttered. Matthew knelt, examining the wound. "Quick, clean." Silas looked at him. "What kind of runaway does that?" Matthew met his gaze. "Not a runaway." They buried Harris shallowly and moved on, but the dynamic had shifted completely now. There was no pretending anymore. Edwin finally said what had been clawing at him since Boone fell. "He's military." Silas did not argue. The forest opened into rolling ground ahead, dotted with rocks and sparse trees, a place where long shots were possible. Matthew stopped abruptly. "This is bad ground." Too late, a shot rang out. Edwin spun as pain exploded through his shoulder. He screamed and dropped, rifle clattering away. The bullet had torn clean through muscle, spinning him to the ground. Silas fired wildly toward the ridge, screaming curses. Matthew dragged Edwin behind a boulder as another shot cracked past, burying itself in stone inches from his head. "He's toying with us," Edwin gasped, blood soaking his sleeve. The black man lay prone on the ridge, calm, rifle steady. He had aimed to wound this time, to slow, to divide. He watched Silas rage and Matthew take control, issuing quiet instructions, trying to keep Edwin alive. He marked Matthew again as the most dangerous of them. Silas's voice broke as he shouted into the trees, "You want us? Come get us!" The black man did not answer. He rose and moved again, vanishing into cover, already planning the next move. Below, 3 men remained alive, 2 unbroken, 1 bleeding, all finally aware of the truth. They had not chased a slave. They had hunted a soldier, and the war he carried inside him had come home with him. Edwin Pike drifted in and out of consciousness as Matthew Cole dragged him through the brush, every jolt sending white-hot pain through his shoulder. Blood soaked his sleeve and dripped steadily into the dirt, leaving a trail neither man could afford to leave, but stopping meant death. "Stay with me," Matthew muttered, voice low and tight. "You pass out, you don't wake up." Edwin gritted his teeth and nodded weakly. His rifle was gone now, lost when the bullet spun him to the ground. He felt naked without it, reduced to weight and liability. Behind them, Silas Crowder followed, breath ragged, rage barely containing fear. He kept looking over his shoulder, expecting another shot at any second. Every snapping twig made his muscles seize. They reached a shallow ravine where the ground dipped just enough to offer cover. Matthew eased Edwin down against the dirt wall and pressed a wad of cloth against the wound. "Pressure," Matthew said. "Don't let go." Edwin did as he was told, hands shaking. "He could have killed me." "Yes," Matthew replied. "He didn't." Silas slammed his fist into a tree. "Why didn't he finish it?" Matthew looked up at him slowly. "Because he wants us slower, louder, tired." Silas's face twisted. "You talk like you know him." "I know men who move like him," Matthew said. "Saw them once, years ago, soldiers, the kind that don't miss." Silas spat. "This ain't no battlefield." Matthew met his eyes. "It is for him." Above and beyond them, unseen, the black man lay hidden among rocks and scrub, watching. He had shifted positions twice since wounding Edwin, careful never to silhouette himself, never to rush. The shot had done exactly what he wanted. It had forced them to stop, to argue, to bleed time. He watched Silas pace like a caged animal. He watched Matthew take control, quietly, competently. He watched Edwin weaken. Fear was no longer a sudden thing for them. It had settled in, deep and corrosive. The black man eased back, circling wide. He left false signs now, broken grass here, disturbed soil there, breadcrumbs meant to confuse, to provoke bad decisions. Below, Silas finally snapped. "We can't just sit here," he hissed. "He's watching us." Matthew replied calmly, "Yes, that's why we don't move blind." Silas rounded on him. "You giving orders now?" Matthew stood slowly, hands open. "I'm trying to keep us alive." Edwin looked between them, panic rising. "Please," he said hoarsely, "just don't fight." Silas laughed, sharp and bitter. "This is your fault," he said to Matthew. "You filled his head with all that soldier talk." Matthew's jaw tightened. "The truth don't stop being true because you don't like it." Silas's hand drifted toward his rifle. For a long second it seemed as if the hunt would end right there. Not by a sniper's bullet, but by greed and pride turning inward. The black man watched that moment carefully. He did not intervene. This too was part of the war. Men destroyed themselves often enough without help. Finally Silas turned away, breathing hard. "We move," he said, "together, slow." They waited until Edwin could stand, then began moving again, every step measured, every sound suspect. Edwin leaned heavily on Matthew, pain carving his face into something older and harder. The terrain shifted again, becoming uneven and rocky, dotted with scrub and thin trees. Sightlines opened and closed unpredictably. The sun hung low, casting long shadows that twisted and stretched like grasping hands. Silas muttered constantly now, curses and half-formed prayers slipping out despite himself. "I ain't dying out here," he said. "Not like this." The black man moved parallel to them, always just out of sight, always in control. He laid a simple snare across a narrow path. A trip line connected to a bent sapling weighted with a sharpened stake. Crude but effective, they didn't see it. Silas hit the line first. The sapling snapped upward, the stake slashing across his thigh. He screamed and fell, clutching his leg as blood poured through his fingers. Matthew swore and dropped beside H. Edwin collapsed nearby, shaking. Silas's scream echoed through the trees, raw and animal. The black man listened from a distance, face unreadable. He did not move in yet. He let the sound travel, let it settle into their bones. Silas writhed, terror finally naked on his face. "He's closing in," he gasped. "I know it." Matthew tore fabric to bind the wound, hands steady despite the urgency. "You'll live," he said, "if we keep moving." Silas grabbed his arm. "Don't leave me." Matthew held his gaze. "Then don't panic." Edwin began to sob quietly, the sound thin and broken. Night approached again, faster this time, as if eager. They found a cluster of rocks and huddled together, backs pressed tight, weapons raised. Silas's leg throbbed, Edwin's shoulder burned, Matthew's nerves sang. Darkness swallowed the forest. Silas whispered, "Say something." No one answered. The black man had moved closer now, silent as breath. He could see them clearly, hear every word, every whimper. He watched Silas tremble, watched Edwin shake, watched Matthew fight to keep control. He thought of nights like this during the war, listening to enemy camps, knowing men were afraid just beyond the dark. He had learned then that fear made people honest. Silas suddenly broke. "He ain't human," he whispered. "Ain't no man moves like this." Matthew did not respond. Silas laughed weakly. "You hear that? Not human." The black man shifted slightly, a branch cracking softly beneath his weight. Edwin gasped. Silas raised his rifle blindly. "Please," Edwin whispered into the dark. "Just go." The black man did not step forward. He let the silence answer instead. Minutes stretched into hours. Sleep came in fragments, if at all. Just before dawn, Matthew felt it, the change in the air, the sense of imminent movement. He tensed. Silas whispered, "He's coming." The black man moved then, not toward them but away, circling wide, resetting the board for the final phase. He had stripped them of strength, of trust, of certainty. When dawn broke, pale and cold, 3 men remained alive, wounded, exhausted, and no longer united. Fear had done more damage than any bullet, and the man they hunted was ready to end it. Dawn arrived thin and colorless, as if even the sun hesitated to look upon what remained of the hunt. Mist clung low to the ground, sliding between rocks and tree trunks, turning distance into illusion. Sound carried strangely again, too far, then not at all. The world felt hollowed out. Silas Crowder woke with a strangled gasp. Pain tore through his leg the moment he moved, sharp and immediate. He clutched his thigh, fingers coming away slick with blood despite Matthew's careful binding. His breath came fast, shallow. Panic followed close behind. Edwin Pike lay nearby, propped against a rock, face pale and drawn. Fever had crept in overnight. His injured shoulder throbbed, swollen and angry. He could barely lift his arm now, much less hold a weapon steady. Matthew Cole rose slowly, joints stiff, eyes scanning the gray forest. He had slept maybe minutes in total. It showed in the deep lines etched into his face, but his gaze was still clear. Focused. "He didn't attack," Silas muttered. "Why didn't he attack?" Matthew answered without looking at him. "Because he didn't need to." Silas laughed weakly. "You keep saying that like it helps." Matthew turned then, his expression hard. "It helps if you listen." Silas looked away. They gathered what little they could. Water skins nearly empty, ammunition dwindling, bodies heavy with exhaustion. Boone and Harris were gone. The dogs were gone. Pride was gone. All that remained was survival. "We head south," Matthew said. "Low ground, back toward the swamp." Silas shook his head violently. "No, he owns the swamp." Matthew met his gaze. "He owns this ground too. There is no safe way now." Edwin swallowed. "I don't think I can make it far." Silas snapped. "You'll make it." Edwin flinched. Matthew stepped between them. "We go slow. We don't separate." Silas said nothing, but his eyes burned with resentment. The man he had once ordered around now spoke with authority he could not challenge. Unseen, the black man watched them prepare to move. He had taken position along a narrow stretch where the land dipped again, where water pooled between old roots and fallen trees. Fog lay thick here, swallowing shape and sound. Perfect ground. He moved ahead of them, always ahead, leaving nothing behind. As they descended into the swamp again, the air grew heavy with rot and damp. Water crept up around their boots. Silas limped badly now, each step a small agony. Edwin leaned heavily on Matthew, breath ragged, eyes unfocused. Silas whispered, "He's close." Matthew nodded once, "Yes." The black man stood knee-deep in water behind a cypress trunk, watching them approach through the fog. He raised his rifle slowly, sighting along the barrel. He could take Silas now, end the loud one, break the spine of what remained. Instead, he waited. A snapping sound echoed suddenly to their right, wood breaking under weight. Silas spun and fired, the shot tearing through fog and bark. The recoil nearly knocked him over. Nothing answered. Edwin screamed, "He's everywhere!" Matthew dragged them forward, forcing motion. "Keep moving!" The black man slipped through water silently, repositioning. He circled wide, cutting them off from higher ground. Every path they chose led deeper into the swamp. They stumbled into a patch where the water dropped suddenly to waist depth. Edwin cried out as he slipped, plunging into the murk. Matthew hauled him back up, muscles straining. Silas lost his footing and fell hard, screaming as his wounded leg hit the water. Blood spread darkly around him, clouding the surface. "I can't," Silas gasped. "I can't." Matthew looked at him, jaw tight. "You have to." Silas shook his head, terror naked now. "Leave me." Matthew hesitated. The black man watched this moment with cold clarity. He recognized it. He had seen men abandoned on battlefields, heard their pleas fade behind advancing lines. Silas's voice broke. "Please." Matthew made his choice. He pulled Edwin forward, away from Silas. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Silas screamed, rage and betrayal tearing through his fear. "You bastard!" He tried to raise his rifle. The shot came then, clean. Final. Silas's head snapped back as the bullet struck him squarely in the chest. He fell backward into the water, arms spreading, eyes staring skyward. The swamp closed over him, bubbles rising briefly before going still. Edwin sobbed openly now. Matthew froze, then forced himself forward again, dragging Edwin deeper into the fog. The black man did not linger on Silas. He moved immediately, advancing with controlled speed. 2 left. Edwin's strength failed minutes later. He collapsed against a tree, sliding down, breath shallow, eyes glassy. "I can't go on," he whispered. "I'm done." Matthew knelt beside him, hands trembling for the first time. "Stay awake." Edwin smiled weakly. "He could have killed me earlier." "Yes," Matthew said. Edwin's gaze drifted toward the fog. "Is he?" A figure emerged silently from the mist. The black man stepped into view at last, rifle lowered but ready. Water rippled around his legs. His face was calm, unreadable. Edwin stared, mouth open. "You?" The black man did not speak. Edwin's eyes filled with tears. "We thought—" The rifle came up. The shot was quick, merciful. Edwin's head slumped forward, body going limp. Matthew rose slowly, hands lifting away from his weapon. He did not reach for his rifle. He knew better. "So," Matthew said quietly, "it ends." The black man regarded him for a long moment. He studied Matthew's stance, his eyes, the acceptance there. "You were the only one who understood," Matthew continued. "From the start." The black man finally spoke, voice low, steady. "Understanding didn't stop you." Matthew nodded once. "No." They stood there in the fog, 2 men shaped by violence, by choices made long ago. Matthew exhaled slowly. "Do what you came to do." The black man raised the rifle. The shot echoed once, then faded. The swamp swallowed the sound, the bodies, the story. Mist drifted back into place. Water stilled. The land reclaimed what it had been given. When the black man finally moved away, leaving no trace behind, the swamp looked empty again, quiet, innocent, unchanged. But it had become a grave, and only one man walked out of it alive. The swamp did not release him all at once. After the last shot faded and silence returned, the black man remained where he was, standing knee-deep in dark water, rifle still shouldered. Mist drifted past him in slow, ghostly currents. The ripples from Matthew Cole's fall spread outward, touched the cypress roots and vanished. For a long moment nothing moved. He listened. Not for men, there were none left, but for the swamp itself, water settling. He carried now was colder than that. Hours later, as the land grew drier and the trees thinned, he paused at a stream to drink. He washed blood from his hands, watching it cloud the water briefly before disappearing. The stream flowed on, indifferent. He thought of turning back north, of crossing into safer ground, of fading into anonymity again. He could do that. He had done it before, but something inside him resisted, not vengeance, witness. The stories would come, they always did. Men would find the bodies eventually, or pieces of them. They would talk, they would argue. They would invent explanations that made sense to them. He wanted those stories to change. That night he made camp far from the swamp, no fire, no sound. He slept lightly, rifle within reach, waking at every shift of wind. Habit was hard to kill. Before dawn he moved again. By the second day rumors began before facts. A farmer found Boone's rifle abandoned near the pines. Another man's dogs refused to enter the swamp, whining and pulling back no matter how hard they were beaten. A trapper saw buzzards circling too early in the season. People talked. By the third day a patrol was sent to look for Silas Crowder and his men. They found nothing at first. No tracks they could read, no camp, no sign of struggle. Then they found a body, Silas first. They recognized him by his size, by his beard. His rifle lay nearby, untouched. His leg wound confused them. The bullet confused them more. "This wasn't no accident," one man said. They found Edwin later, then Harris. Boone last, bones scattered by animals. Matthew Cole was the hardest to find. When they did, he lay almost peacefully, as if placed there rather than killed. The patrol leader shook his head. "This was done by a professional." "By who?" someone asked. No one answered. The black man heard these rumors from a distance. He listened without being seen. In a small town near the river, he sat on the edge of a crowd gathered around a general store, hat pulled low, clothes plain. "Some say it was Union men," a farmer said, "come south after the war." "Nah," another replied. "No group moves like that. One man did it." "That ain't possible." The black man said nothing. He left town before nightfall. Days turned into weeks. He traveled carefully, avoiding roads when he could, blending when he couldn't. Sometimes he slept in abandoned shacks, sometimes in open fields under the stars. The land felt different now, not hostile, not safe, just open. One evening, near the edge of a burned plantation, he encountered another black man traveling north, younger, nervous. "You alone?" the man asked. "Yes," he answered. They walked together for a while in silence. Finally, the younger man spoke. "People say slave catchers won't go near the Delta no more." The black man nodded slightly. "They say a ghost there," the man continued. "A soldier ghost." The black man stopped walking and looked at him. "Ghosts don't pull triggers," he said quietly. The younger man studied him, then smiled faintly. "Still, they scared." "That's enough," the black man replied. They parted ways soon after. As autumn approached, the black man reached higher ground, safer ground, places where Union uniforms no longer drew attention, where a black man walking alone did not automatically mean danger. One night, sitting beside a quiet road, he cleaned his rifle carefully, piece by piece. He did not know if he would ever need it again. He only knew he would keep it ready. He thought of Matthew Cole one last time, the man who had seen the truth and chosen wrong anyway. Understanding did not absolve guilt. The road stretched ahead of him, pale under moonlight. He rose, slung the rifle across his back, and began walking again. Behind him, far to the south, fear had changed sides, and ahead of him the world waited, uncertain, imperfect, but no longer owned by men like Silas Crowder. The hunter was gone. Only the soldier remained. The South did not forget easily. Weeks after the bodies were found, after the patrols stopped searching and the swamp returned to its usual quiet, the story began to change shape. Facts thinned, fear thickened. What remained was something harder to kill than truth, a legend. It started in whispers, low voices on porches at dusk, murmured conversations in barns and back rooms. 5 slave catchers had gone into the Delta. None had come out alive. The land had swallowed them whole. Some said Union deserters had done it. Others said Confederate holdouts, bitter and half-mad. A few claimed it was bandits, but the most persistent version, the one people repeated only after looking around first, was simpler. It was one man, a black man. He moved like a soldier, shot like the devil, left no tracks that stayed, and he was still out there. Plantation owners stopped hiring hunters near the swamp. Rewards went unclaimed. Dogs refused to track certain trails, pulling back hard enough to choke themselves. Men who had once boasted about catching runaways now found reasons to stay home after dark. Fear had learned a new direction. Far north of the Delta, the black man heard none of this directly. He did not seek it out. Stories traveled faster than people, but he stayed ahead of them, moving with the same care he always had. He crossed rivers at night, slept in high ground by day, avoided towns unless necessity forced him in. When he did enter a town, he became ordinary, a laborer looking for work, a man passing through, a face people glanced at and then forgot. He preferred it that way. One evening, months later, he stood on a rise overlooking a small river town. Lights flickered below. Laughter carried faintly on the air. Life going on, untouched by what had happened in the swamp. He could stop here, he thought. Settle, work, fade. The thought did not frighten him. It also did not fully convince him. He had learned something about himself during the hunt. Not pride, not bloodlust, but clarity. He knew now exactly what he was capable of, and exactly when he would use it. That knowledge sat heavy, but it did not crush him. He descended into the town just after sunset. At a modest boarding house, he paid for a meal and a bed with coin he had earned honestly weeks earlier. The woman who served him food did not look twice at him. That, more than anything, felt strange. After supper, he sat on the back steps and listened to the night. 2 men nearby spoke in low voices. "You hear about them slave catchers?" One said. "Yeah, folks say they was hunted." "Hunted how?" The other man hesitated. "Like animals." The black man said nothing. That night he dreamed, not of the swamp, not of gunfire, but of open land, stretching far enough that no walls or chains could be imagined. In the days that followed, he took work repairing fences, hauling lumber, doing the kind of labor that left his hands sore and his mind quiet. He did not tell anyone where he was from. No one asked. Still, the stories followed. A man claimed he had seen a black soldier walking alone at dawn, rifle on his back, vanishing into fog. Another swore he heard shots echoing in the swamp long after the bodies were found. Someone else said the land itself had turned against men who hunted other men. Truth bent around fear until it became something else entirely. The black man understood that this was beyond his control. He did not need to be remembered accurately. He only needed to be remembered. One afternoon, a stranger approached him while he worked near the edge of town. A white man, older, cautious. "You fought in the war," the man said quietly. It was not a question. The black man paused, then nodded once. "So did I," the man said. "Different side." They stood in silence for a moment. "Some men came home from that war unchanged," the stranger continued. "Others brought it with them." The black man met his eyes. "Some war don't end when papers are signed." The stranger studied him, then tipped his hat and walked away. As winter approached, the black man moved on again. He felt no urge to stay rooted. Movement had become part of him, as natural as breathing. South of where he traveled, the swamp remained avoided. Years passed. Children grew up hearing warnings not to wander too close to certain waters. Young men laughed at the stories until night fell, and the frogs went quiet all at once. Slave catchers found their trade drying up, replaced by silence and rumor. No one ever officially connected the deaths. No court recorded a verdict. No paper named a killer. But fear did not need proof. Sometimes late at night, someone would swear they saw a lone figure on a distant ridge, still watching, impossible to approach. Other times a gunshot would echo where no hunters were known to be. Each telling added something, took something away. The black man became a ghost, not because he had died, but because he could not be caught. Decades later, long after the war had faded into ink and monuments, an old man sat telling a story to wide-eyed listeners. 5 men once hunted a black man in the Delta, he said. Thought him weak, thought him scared. They never knew he'd learned how to kill men who thought they owned him. What happened to him? A child asked. The old man shrugged. Some say he went north, some say he kept walking, some say he never stopped hunting. And the 5 men? The old man's voice dropped. The land took 'em, somewhere far from that story, long removed from the swamp. A very old black man walked slowly along a quiet road, leaning on a stick. His rifle was long gone now, buried where no one would ever find it. His hands trembled with age, not regret. He paused, watching the sun dip low, painting the world in the same red and gold he remembered from another life. He had not become a legend on purpose. He had simply refused to die quietly. As darkness settled, he continued on, leaving no mark behind him but the faintest set of footprints, soon erased by time. And in the South, where fear once hunted the powerless, people still whispered of a man who taught the land a different lesson. That prey can learn, that chains can break, and that sometimes history does not write names, only warnings.